Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. 6.4 million years ago, humans did not exist. The world was not ours. It was a world of giants and predators, of storms and fear. And in this jungle of death, a fragile creature emerged. They were not yet human. Hair covered their bodies, their faces half ape, half man. They had no fire, no weapons, no language, only trembling hands and the instinct to survive. The old ones carried scars across their faces, their weary eyes burning with the memory of battles survived. The young followed behind, fearful but curious, their small hands clutching sticks. Side by side, they stepped into a world that did not forgive weakness. Every sound in the night carried danger. The rustle of leaves could be a python waiting to strike. The ripple of water could be a crocodile rising from the depths. The silence itself was the loudest threat of all. One night, lightning split the sky, igniting a tree into flame. The proto-humans froze, their wide eyes reflecting the fire. They did not yet know its power. They feared it. But deep inside, something stirred. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. Hunger gnawed at them. They foraged for roots, insects, and bitter berries, their mouths stained with dirt. Old hands showed the young how to crack nuts with stones, the first sparks of tools. Slowly, the young learned. Slowly, survival became shared, but danger was never far. A shadow moved through the tall grass, a saber-toothed cat, muscles rippling under golden fur, fangs gleaming like ivory daggers. It stalked silently, its glowing eyes locked on the tribe. The first scream split the air. The beast charged. Chaos erupted. The old shrieked warnings. The young scrambled for branches. The predator lunged, claws slashing, teeth snapping. But for the first time, sticks swung, stones flew, voices rose together. The saber-tooth roared and turned away, wounded, fading into the jungle's shadows. The proto-humans clung to each other in silence, their hearts pounding, their hands still shaking with terror. But in their eyes, a spark glowed. Together, they had survived. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. The jungle gave nothing freely. Every tree hid a predator. Every shadow whispered with death. Hunger grew sharper with every sunrise. Old survivors searched for roots, clawing at the dirt with scarred hands. The young watched, their hollow eyes filled with desperation. Every bite mattered. Every scrap was shared. And still, it was never enough. One day, as they searched for food beneath the canopy, a shadow fell across the group. From above, a massive python dropped, wrapping coils around one of the young. Screams pierced the jungle. The boy's eyes bulged with terror as the snake squeezed tighter. At first, the others froze in fear. But then, an old survivor lifted a stone. Another grabbed a stick. Together they struck. The jungle echoed with shrieks, with the sound of rock smashing scale, of wood striking flesh. And then, silence. The serpent lay still. Blood dripped into the mud. The young gasped for air, alive. The tribe had won their first true battle, not against hunger, but against fear. They tore into the flesh, raw and bloody. For the first time, they ate together, not as scavengers, but as hunters. The old showed the young how to strike, how to smash, how to survive. Something had changed. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. But the jungle was not finished testing them. Rain began to fall. At first a drizzle, then a torrent, until the skies opened wide. The storm drowned the land, rivers overflowed, and lightning split the forest into flames. Proto-humans huddled beneath tree roots, rain soaking their fur, their faces pale with terror. The old remembered storms before, but But this one was different. This one tore trees from the ground. This one howled like a beast of the sky. And then, through the sheets of rain, another tribe appeared. Not predators, not animals, but proto-humans, like them. Hollow-eyed, soaked, starving. For a moment, silence held. Two groups stared at one another through the storm. Each clutched sticks, each gripped stones, each desperate for food and for fire they did not yet control. The first snarl broke the silence. A charge, a scream, and suddenly the storm was filled not only with thunder, but with the roars of proto-humans fighting proto-humans. Mud churned, blood mixed with rain, sticks slammed against bone, stones cracked against skulls. It was the first war, not against beasts, but against their own. Bodies lay still in the mud, lifeless eyes staring up into the storm. Others crawled away, bloodied, broken, but alive. The survivors sat in silence, staring at their trembling hands. For the first time, they had tasted the fury of their own kind. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. The storms had passed, but the silence that followed was far more dangerous. The jungle was quiet, no birds, no roars, only shadows moving in the mist. The survivors were few, old ones, their scarred faces weary but determined. Young ones, thin and frightened, clinging to sticks and stones as if they were lifelines. They were starving, but they still walked forward. At night, they huddled in caves, the old cracked nuts with trembling hands, passing small fragments to the young. The children imitated clumsily, learning, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. It was more than food. It was memory, passed from one generation to the next. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. But danger was never gone. Glowing eyes appeared in the distance, wolves, thin with hunger, ribs showing under fur. They circled, growling, closing in. The old stepped forward, scars lit faintly by the moon, holding their branches high. The young pressed together behind them, wide-eyed, clutching stones. And then, the wolves attacked. Chaos, snarls, screams. The old swung their sticks with all their strength. The young hurled stones, their hands steady despite fear. Blood mixed with mud, fireless sparks of survival echoing in their cries. At last, the wolves fled. The proto-humans stood, trembling, wounded, but alive. Subscribe now and join the journey of survival, only on Rise of the First Humans. When dawn came, sunlight broke faintly through the clouds. For the first time in months, light touched their scarred faces. The old leaned on sticks, exhausted but unyielding. The young looked upward, eyes wide with something new, hope. Together they scavenged roots, shared insects, smashed stones sharper. They learned, they endured, they adapted. Generations passed. The old fell, their stories buried in the earth. The young grew older, carrying lessons forward. And from those few survivors came us. 6.4 million years ago, they were not yet human. But in their trembling hands, they carried the spark of everything we would become. Not the strongest, not the fiercest, but those who adapt, survive. This is Rise of the First Humans. Subscribe now and continue the journey of survival.